Nothing is more arrogant for a marketer than to say awareness is a buying stage. Nobody becomes aware of your product. What they do is they have a need. This is B2B, guys. They have a business need. They seek out solutions for that need. If no one's aware of your product, the way you're going to get aware is by educating on this need, right? But that's still not awareness. That is engagement.
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. We are rolling. Hey, everyone. We are here, and I'm excited to introduce my guest today. He's a great guy. I've known him for a long time, and this is a very special episode because this is a CTM expert guest conversation on this podcast. He is an expert in the ecosystem. And like I said, a great guy. I've known him for a long time. And every time I talk to him, he says stats, he says smart things. My brain hurts, but I feel like a better marketer out the back end. So I'm excited to have him here. I've already got it broke into the Monster Energy drink to be able to keep up. Now is your time to get yours if you need to. You have been so warned. Who is he, Casey? Well, he's a marketing leader, a thought leader, a go-to-market advisor and strategist. He helps the fastest growing companies to achieve a perpetual demand and not just those random acts of crazy marketing. He is also a demand process architect, an investor, and an author. Co-author of the book, Chief Growth Officer's Handbook, author of the book, Balancing the Demand Equation. Gosh, books are just falling out of this guy's ears. CEO and co-founder of ANNUITAS, Inc., Adam Needles. Welcome, sir.
Hey there, Casey. It's a pleasure to be on. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you on here. I can't wait to learn from you. And you know what? I am going to just save the commentary for later. And I just got to put on my giant foam finger, though, and ask you, Adam, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do to connect to their market?
Yeah, that is the question, right? And so let me throw two stats out there since you know.
I did. You are the stat guy. You know things.
Let's go back to 2016. Our friends at CEB at the time said that in major B2B enterprise B2B purchasing decisions, there were like literally they had the stat 6.8 stakeholders on average involved. Let's go back to this year, SBI, on average, 11 stakeholders. Like we've nearly doubled, right, the numbers of people that are involved. Like no one is making on a B2B decision, a decision by themselves, right? There's no individual MQL that is going to turn, right? There's going to have to be multiple contacts you need to make. And so to your big finger question, right, goes without saying that you better be putting the buyer at the center of your go-to-market, right? It should be an outside in, not an inside out. Many companies struggle with that. Many companies struggle with even knowing their buyer journey. Many companies struggle with operationalizing GTM around buyer journey. But guys, I got to say, go-to-market demand programs built around buyer journey are going to fail today because it's no longer buyer journey, it's buyer journeys. And we have a savvy, sophisticated buying unit, and we need to move away from, think about this, right? So decade ago, Sirius was out there pushing MQLs. And I got to say, having a lead process is still critical, right? Being able to generate qualified leads is still critical. Let's go back, half a decade ago, there were some, talking heads out there that started blowing up ABM in a big way. The problem with both MQL mindset and ABM mindset is it's inside out thinking. It is sales led thinking. It's not buyer led thinking. We're not seeing, we're not engaging, right? And our inefficiencies at an all-time high. Like nobody sells to a company. You sell to people at a company. And so it's time for us to make a substantial change. And we shouldn't be talking about MQLs versus ABMs. We should be talking about BUD, right? And I'm not talking about the SEAL training. I'm talking about
Right.
buyer unit demand. Buyer unit demand. And we've got to be out there engaging the group. We've got to be engaging multiple stakeholders. We've got to be giving differential stakeholders the differential content and support that they need. We need to be providing stewardship end to end, and we need to be engaging with people who, by the way, are never going to use the product. You know, how many times is a CFO or a CTO never ever going to log into something, and yet they are the final decision maker on it? We need buyer unit demand. And so this is it, Casey. This is we at ANNUITAS, we've been talking about this for a while. We've been working on this with clients for a number of years. We've been driving orchestration around the buying unit, but we're putting a stake in the sand and saying, hey, it's time to move from MQL, move from ABM. It's time to move towards buyer unit demand. That is where go-to-market leaders, VPs of marketing, chief revenue officers, that's where they're going to drive success with their business moving forward.
Powerful. Tell me more about this buyer unit demand. Help me understand the definition of that. Is that the multiple journeys all combined into what a company experiences?
Yeah, it's about buyer unit demand is about an orchestrated approach in go to market. It's not about the lead. It's not about the account. It's about the stakeholder group. And so it's about building off of that, right? And it's about an interactive engagement between marketing and, like, for example, inside sales, lead developer, BDR. It's leveraging, certainly AI agent technology, but it's not any one of those are the solution, right? It is about a team of processes and content and technology working together, right? So we need to be thinking about a GTM stack, right? Marketing automation, sales, CRMs like Salesforce, marketing automations like Adobe's Marketo, working together with AI agents, working together with CDP, right? Working together with multiple different pieces, and the marketing automation, the AI triggering, right? And then the BDR, DGR, LDR, ISR, whatever your term is, group, working and engaging. And before something really becomes a mature opportunity, and as it goes through the early stages of an opportunity, it's about really building up those multiple points of engagement. But the thing is that if we're going to be successful with buyer unit demand, we've got to have mapped out the differential conversation tracks that matter to these different stakeholder groups. And it's not about titles. It's about, common needs. Like, there might be 2 or 3 titles that have the same common need. Like, scale that way. Don't scale on titles. Scale on, common needs, what we call, from a market research, ethnographic, right? Behavioral based, needs based segmentation, right? So let's have that type of segmentation. And then let's look at the journey end to end for the buying unit. And let's talk about when different folks drop in and out. And then let's make sure that we understand their hierarchy of needs, how they're interacting with each other, their content consumption, their information needs, the channels that they want to be in. I was just having a conversation with a CMO yesterday, talking about, an enterprise software product, and really trying to better understand the buying unit there and how to go after. And the reality is that there are certain stakeholders that you can engage with digitally. Some that are going to respond well to email, some that are going to respond well to inbound web, some that are going to respond to, a webinar, some that are going to respond well to, seeing a podcast or video. But there's still executives in the mix that you want to get a hold of them. You need to get a hold of them live, and your field marketing is so critical, right? The live interaction is so critical. So,
hey, real quick, buyer unit, is that the word for the aggregation of the multiple stakeholders and their journeys?
yes, yeah, yeah. Those That group of stakeholders constitute a buying unit.
Got it. It's almost like one of those like Cat9 cables where if you cut open an Ethernet cable, there's like all these little wires in there.
Yes. And by the way, it's a twisted pair, dude. It's not straight. It's a twisted pair. That's the way buying is.
That's what we are, dude. We're a twisted pair. That's what we are. Hey, okay, so we got the buyer and what's different about if you're not thinking buyer unit demand, you're just thinking old school. What are the changes? I definitely heard you have to think of the different stakeholders. I mean, is that the key difference of the shift to buyer unit demand?
So let's talk about from a process standpoint. Lead
Yeah.
and opportunity processes, lead management, opportunity management, more important than ever, right? But you shouldn't be generating a single QL that you then attribute to a single opportunity. What you should be doing, you should be aggregating multiple QLs. And by the way, when I think of a QL, I believe that is someone who is certainly the right target. But let's be clear, the serious version of MQL was nothing more than the right title, right? And then the joke around hand raising, which was they filled out a form. Like, that's not a hand raise.
Right. Like for a PDF too. They had nothing to do. They didn't want a phone call.
Right, exactly. Oh my God. How many times have I become an MQL, right, for downloading a single content piece, right? Thank you, legacy of serious decisions. It makes me think of the Joker saying, "Why so serious?" But anyway, I digress.
I love that. Let the memes flow.
At Annuitas, we talk about a QL, right? And a QL is sustained engagement with your company, sustained engagement over multiple steps in your journey. Certainly right demographics, right firmographics, right? Account fit, but then also lower funnel intent. And so-called intent data often is actually not that, right? This idea that a company's in market, right, through like 6 cents, right? Like, that still doesn't tell you anything, right? That's just like thin air, right? You want to know the individual buyers that are in market, right? And so a QL is someone who is engaging with you, digging around. They've got right fit, for ICP, but also they're exhibiting lower funnel behaviors. Okay. So that's a QL, right? But you need a collection of QLs, because you might have one QL who is like the, second tier, mid-level person who the executive is tasked with researching and digging into this and bringing it back to them, right? So they're one piece of it. They're not going to make the decision, but they're going to be a key influencer recommender.
Right.
Then you've got the executive that has mandated digging into this particular issue, right? And so that person needs to become a QL at some point, right? Then you've got their boss, right? Another step up, right? Which might be the CEO, right? But also might be another C-suite, like a CRO, who you've got to get engaged, right? Then, at some point the CFO's got to have a POV on this, because, hey, this is a 6-figure purchase, So you start to, and then, by the way, there's going to be people that are frontline users that want to test it out and make sure it's going to work for them. So it could be 4, 5, 6, right? So going back to the CEB and SBI numbers, right? Basically, they're saying half a baker's dozen to a baker's dozen is kind of what a buying unit looks like today. And so how do we start to QL multiple of those guys, right? So I talked about the change in thinking about leads. Now we think differently about opportunities, right? And so it's not that this is not a capability. Like, this has been on, the opportunity object out of the box at Salesforce for years, which is you have different, the economic buyer, the business buyer.
Different people. The roles have been there forever, and no one ever uses
But that's where you need process and methodology and training that is about building that up. The process should be to use that opportunity object, not to record your deal and get paid, but to progress through buyer and seller actions, to progress through these stages to get to a point where you've got multiple stakeholders, you've answered multiple questions, you've clear, and so as you start to, this becomes a 40, 50, 60% progression opportunity. you've got a gaggle and you're starting to chip away at that half a baker's dozen. And so this is a different way. Like, I didn't change anything for half a second there in terms of I'm still using marketing automation, I'm still using, CRM, but my marketing automation looks very different, right? My CRM looks very different. I've got to say, John Miller years ago built something into the Marketo platform called RCM, and Adobe's changed around the name of that a million times. So I don't know what they're calling it right this minute, but still is so powerful because it allows you to stage gate the interactions, the signals to get to a QL, and then to align the QL to opportunity progression. And then, with some work on the Salesforce side, particularly simplifying the way people set up their opportunity objects, and simplifying some of the requirements around registering these different pieces and training around it. Like, you can rapidly get to a place where you've got a clean set of QLs, a clean set of multi-stakeholder opportunities. So that's the funnel management side, right? And we can get into this, but so then there's this other side, which is, but you need to be orchestrating the interactions with them, the emails, the website personalization, the event invites, right? And so this is about another piece, which I used the term earlier, conversation track architecture, which is we need a new way to think about the conversation tracks, the stages, and how we orchestrate multi points of interaction around that buying unit, including through traditional market automation and including through, AI, lead development agent technology.
Okay. Dude, this is great.
I know that was a lot right there, but I'd like you asked a question. You were like, how do you make a Whopper so delicious? And so, like, I had to give you the full set of details on it.
Chemicals, right? Chemicals.
It's like, see, I knew you'd bring it back to being a twisted pair again.
Yeah, Twisted Pair. Hey. That's the new name of the episode, right? Okay, couple things. One, QL, and my inner cynic comes out as well. You got to have somebody asking, well, if Sirius was being goofy by making up a name for a lead and fra la la, are you doing the same thing, or what is markedly different about the idea of looking at a QL?
It's not. It's all the things I just described that goes into it, like the Sirius MQL. Somebody would have a pulse, they would do something, and there'd be no stage gating. Like, I'm talking about stage gating, scoring, qualifying, like multiple, like you need content interaction qualifications. And that needs to speak to where people are in their journey. You need, layers of firmographic, demographic checkpoints. You need
so you have far less QLs than you would have of a traditional MQL.
Absolutely. But guess what? So, if I go back to sort of industry averages for conversion rates, are often pretty low. Like, sometimes 1 in 3, 1 in 5, 1 in 6 leads becomes an opportunity, and sometimes even lower than that. When we've got these checkpoints, 40 to 50% of QLs make their way to an opportunity.
Yeah. So, right. And I mean, there's some internal politicking that has to, or explanation that has to occur to say, like,
I'm going to say change management, because I would really love to see sales and marketing get away from politics. That is the problem, is people using data and acronyms to cover for not actually doing anything. And I want sales and marketing teams to just work together and do something great. By the way, I mean, we're still seeing, so at ANNUITAS, we've always said that, like, the kind of clients we work with, like the true companies with demand engines, that's like the top 10 to 15% of the market. And these are organizations where there's full sales and marketing interaction, there's nurture loops, there's, playbooks for sales, there's like a good G team interaction. That's the top 10 to 15%. CMO Council just had some data recently saying this. Here's the quote: only 12% of CMOs believe they have content marketing engines that are strategically programmed to target the right audiences with relevant and persuasive content. So, like, we're talking about, like, what we're talking about is how you outperform. What we're talking about is how you get to the Super Bowl, not just run a team that's in the league for yet another year.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Although I just want to say, I don't know why I just brought up an NFL analogy because I do not watch football, but I am glued to the TV for hockey, and I should have said Stanley Cup. And there's so much to say here, but so I promise in the future my sports analogies will be either hockey or skiing related.
Okay, hockey or skate? Hey,
You should talk about what you know about. I'm not an expert on the NFL. I don't know anything about the NFL, but I do know that sports analogies aside, like the thing that needs to happen is to outperform, like to have a go-to-market program that really outperforms. And we're still seeing the type of buyer unit demand, the type of, true orchestration, having a true growth engine, like that still is like 10 to 15%. That's only a sliver of the marketplace.
part of that efficiency will come from not having to parse through quantity. You have the quality, but now we need to really take care of it, be deliberate about it, and not treat it like a fast food drive-through, because now we're in the serious game with these QLs. My next question is, man, this uh, dang buyer committee doubling
Yeah.
in size just about. I already had a lot of work to do. How does a marketing leader see this change that's happening? And they're like, I'm just a marketing leader. They've got a small and, hardworking team, but like, how do you approach what looks like eating an elephant here?
First of all, it's not boiling the ocean. So this is why we talk about the concept of conversation track architecture.
Yeah.
What are the top 2, 3, 4, 5 conversation tracks? I'm not suggesting that you have, 800 different iterations. That's actually the enemy. If you're trying to use titles or vertical industries to segment your go-to-market, you cannot produce enough content. You cannot produce enough
Right.
differentiated, parts of your website, email chains, field events. You can't do enough webinars to keep up with that. So what we need to do is we need to aggregate it down to the common paths. And so when I say conversation track architecture, you need to say, what are the most commercially meaningful, differentiated conversations that you're having? Here's a business conversation, right? A business impact conversation. Here's
For
a
sure.
financial impact conversation. Here's a technical impact conversation. Here's an operational impact conversation. Here's an end user productivity conversation. So pick the 1, 2, 3 of those, or the 4, 5, 6 of those, right? So whatever's most viable and meaningful, really zero in. And it's about mapping titles, vertical orientations, adapting to that. So you don't have to go crazy. Second, you shouldn't go crazy on the content. In fact, the biggest examples I've ever seen of going out of control on content are organizations that produce the same content for the same stage over and over again, and then just have huge gaps in other stages of the journey. So like if you've seen the journey, if you've seen the conversation tracks, right? So your X and your Y axis, you can then discreetly go like, what are the information needs at different stages, right? Like, I mean, I'm in the business of doing deep research and discerning this and getting it right. But I got to tell you, it's not rocket science. My dad was a rocket scientist. He worked for Raytheon on the Patriot missile program. He was a rocket scientist. This is not rocket science. Okay.
Right.
This is just understanding.
That's a great point. It is not rocket science.
It's understanding the stages.
You have a couple, 3, 2, 3, 4 conversation tracks in your conversation track architecture.
And then a couple of buying stages. And by the way, awareness is not a buying stage.
Tell me more.
Awareness is not a buying stage. There's no point where someone is like dying to become aware of your product. Nothing is more arrogant for a marketer than to say awareness is a buying stage. Nobody becomes aware of your product. what they do is they have a need. This is B2B, guys. They have a business need. They seek out solutions for that need. If no one's aware of your product, the way you're going to get aware is by educating on this need, right? But that's still not awareness. That is engagement. That is supporting, a buyer journey need. You know, there's this sense of, and, you go through a process where you have a business pain point, you go through iterations, try and solve it. Eventually you're looking for a solution to it. And so effective B2B companies are participating in that pain point to solution arc. But at no point in that journey is that buyer dying to be made aware of your product.
When maybe they are intending to say they're aware of our brand, but as you say it, I guess it does kind of feel like a BS stat,
Yeah.
not really top of the funnel. I guess if you're going to measure anything, it's they're engaging with us.
Engagement is not a stage either. Like engagement is just the activity, right?
What should the stages be?
So, well, the stages should be relative to, what is the higher order business need, right? What is then the catalyst or trigger pain point that then gets you engaged in this topic? How do you then research and frame it up? Like those are like 2, 3, 4 stages we just talked about. As you start to research and frame it up, how do you then think about the potential solutions, right? How do you then evaluate those solutions, right? These are the pieces that lead to content and information at different stages.
Can you give me an example? Because if you're going to kill awareness and engagement, you got to give us something.
I think about in the security space, we've worked with a lot of cybersecurity, internet security companies. You think about in the security space, you've got, we worked with Code 42 for a long time, and they were about insider threat, right? And so I don't know what their documented buyer journey was off the top of my head right now, but I can go back and say that, there's some higher order strategic threat issue, right? Then there's like a moment where there's a breach, right? And so some combination of those gets somebody out there going, okay, now I'm in an active buying process, right? Well, for these guys, as they started to dig in to what had happened, what they're saying is that, hey, there's two big approaches to security. One is you stop everyone going through the gate. The other one is you let everybody go through the gate, but you actually engage with the exceptions, like what looks like it's out of place, right? And so, so there was that stage of it, right? Then there's another stage of, okay, well, those exceptions, right? Like, are those exceptions, coming at you, or are those exceptions actually coming from within? And that concept of insider threat is not that employees are trying to ransack companies. It's that employees are the ones that get targeted and then become the back door into companies all the time. And so, come on, this is the way spying agencies work, right?
Totally.
The CIA goes and recruits somebody. The CIA doesn't attack the Kremlin, right?
Right.
The CIA goes and recruits people that have backdoors into people who have backdoors into, the ruling, oligarchy. And that's how you get in, right? So the Code 42 guys eventually wanted to sell an insider threat product, but what they had to do was back out to hey, somebody had an issue. Let's reframe what that issue was. Let's reframe the approach to that issue. Let's think about it differently. And let's then help you understand what a platform that is helping to address insider threat would look like. And then, introduce the Code 42, but there was never awareness in that. It was that they were helping to thoughtfully engage people, and they were just acquired by Mimecast not that long ago. So they're not a standalone company anymore, but it's just an example of you don't lead with insider threat. You don't lead with, you have an inside threat, because that doesn't connect to somebody's need. Somebody's
True.
need is, hey, I had this breach. I need to solve for that moving forward, right? I need to frame it up, right? So let's get 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. Those are the buying stages. Nobody wakes up in B2B most of the time and is ready to buy in a category and is already knowledgeable about that.
Oh, for sure.
That's not where particularly not most enterprise software happens.
Do you customize all the stages then?
No,
On reporting?
no. I think that there's a lot of common stages like, framing the problem, framing the solution. Like you could think about that there are some common stages that you see.
Okay.
Evaluating providers. Like these are common stages that we see in client, projects all the time.
Okay. Dang, dude.
Yeah.
So this is great. Do you have another book coming out? I feel like
Yeah.
this is right for
N-
another one.
no, but I think this is what we're really focusing on. We're actually engaging a lot with the marketplace on this, and actually we're gonna be talking a lot about this at our client conference in the fall. So
Oh, that's cool.
we're I think I think that I think that there's a moment and opportunity to do something really different. And like I said, we goodbye to MQLs. Many people were goodbye to them a long time ago. That doesn't mean lead management is not important, right? But goodbye to QLs, goodbye to ABM. I'm not saying that we're not taking and focusing on key accounts, and certainly opportunity management is more important than ever, but these frames all get it wrong, right? And the frame that we need is to understand, here's a quick stat, right? 80% of content goes unused by B2B sellers, right? And substantial portion of marketing content lacks the right context to be used effectively, so you think about like all this stuff that we generate to try to connect, right? Substantial portions of leads go unconverted, right? Substantial portions of, account-based paid media programs convert at like sub percentage rate.
Well, I was gonna ask you, when you mentioned ABM gets it wrong,
Yeah.
shots fired.
Yeah.
What is it that ABM gets wrong?
Because let's be clear, right? So let's talk about Terminus, right? Let's talk about, Sangram and his ABM book. Like all he was doing was just trying to sell paid media ads targeted to companies, not individuals.
Dang.
So like, let's just think about like, that's not revolutionary. Like if you weren't targeting the right companies before that, boy, wow. Okay. LinkedIn is, that's a big part of what they're trying to do is, they have their iHeart ABM they've been pushing for a number of years. And, yes, accounts should be critical, but nobody markets to companies. We market to individuals. And so what gets lost in the MQL versus ABM combat is that we're marketing to a buying unit, a savvy, multi-stakeholder buying unit. And so what gets lost in the mix here is that we need to engage with a differential set of individuals who all need to become QLs and who all need to be supporting that opportunity moving forward. And yes, that is account-based, but you can't knock on the front door of a big company and sell to that company. You need to connect to the stakeholders. And so we need a very different frame, and the buying unit demand approach, the buying unit go-to-market approach is the change that we need to be making out there. And we're doing this with our clients. We've been doing this for a number of years. We're working to take this up to the next level because it is, again, reiterating the CEB, the SBI numbers, like it is a substantial challenge. And by the way, the reason why this can't just be solved with sellers and AI alone, the reason why it is a demand marketing and field marketing problem as well, because we've gone from a state where, there might be a single touch point in like the late 90s, early 2000s to, a decade later, more than half of buyers, viewing 3 to 5 pieces of content. And then like a data point from Google last year about the average B2B buyer journey, including anywhere from 20 to 500 content touch points. Like
20 to 500?
20 to 500.
Is that including every individual involved in a buyer unit?
So this is exactly it. So this is the orchestration challenge you have.
Got it. Okay, that's not just one person.
No.
Okay, that makes more sense because like one person doing 500 pieces of content, like, dude, you got to get back to work.
Casey, not everybody can be like you. I know you're prolific. I know like, I mean, new book comes out. You're like 5 minutes later. Okay, I've read all 600 pages of it, right?
I do read quickly. I do, but not that quickly.
But we have an orchestration challenge, right? And so that orchestration challenge is, the baseline of it is the number of stakeholders, and it's complicated by the volumes of content and points of interaction across those stakeholders. So to drive a buying process to its conclusion, we have an orchestration challenge, and that requires a full court integrated go-to-market stack, full court end-to-end demand process that's orchestrating this full court conversation track architecture to drive the conversations, the plays. Everybody needs to be working together. And so marketing automation, CRM, AI, agent technology, particularly in some of the handoffs, some of the nurture, re-nurture stages, your web personalization, your sales playbooks, all of these things need to be working together to see the buying unit, to orchestrate around the buying unit. I know I'm like beating the crap out of this particular point, but it's so important. Like, this is the whole game.
Yeah. So it's not rocket science, but at the same time, there's a lot of to-dos on that list. So my question to you is, what is step one?
Step one is getting your arms around the multiple stakeholders, not just understanding them. That, the classic product marketing personas are not enough. That tells you nothing, tells you not, like, no way to engage with those people. You want to certainly know the group and the stages they're going to go through, but you want to know where they're hanging out to engage with that information. Because content consumption through engagement channels, like that insight, and if it's going to be a live thing, if it's going to be an email thing, a website thing, you've got to know. So having that interaction-based insight is a critical piece, because once you know that, you can then start to say and rationalize, well, part of this is on our website. What part of this is in an email? What part of this is in some thought leadership pieces? What part of this is at an event? What part of this is at our booth? What part of this is in a sales conversation?
Man,
we need to rationalize what's in the sales conversation, because the idea that the seller gets on the phone and just starts working, like, that buyer's already in process, in situ, right? Like, the buyer's already doing something. The buying unit approach, the orchestration approach, says, hey, we know where people are. We have telemetry. And so we're dropping in, engaging with them, right place, right time, right channel. And sales is just one of your channels.
Right.
Man.
Dang. How do you sleep at night? There's so many things to do.
I know.
We got work to do.
We're just getting going.
Yeah.
I think we're still at the beginning of, I think people might think that, cloud and API was a big moment. Marketing automation was a big moment. I'm sure people think AI is a big moment, but I think that the big moment is operationalizing around the buying unit. And that is being done successfully by so few companies today. So maybe that is the next book.
I think so.
BUD for dummies.
Yeah. Buy unit demand, baby.
Yep.
Let's go. But you got to start with t-shirts. Before you write a book, you got to just make t-shirts up.
You see, this has all been about me today. I mean,
I could use like a gym, one of those like gym shirts that you can, like, the sweat kind, the right? And it
Like
says,
cut that's like cut off and slightly rolled at some point.
sure, but it says like a buyer unit. I'm like, hey, I'm a
Exactly.
unit. So,
Yeah.
buyer unit. I'm in demand.
Yeah.
Let's
So
see.
I'm talking about go-to-market buds, not Navy SEALs buds,
Right.
which is its
Right.
own challenge, and respect that. So
But you get to go to sleep at night, at least in the marketing
right,
space.
right. The go-to-market and marketing version of buds, you get more than an hour of sleep, and you don't have sand in every crevice of your body.
Right. No one's yelling at you,
Exactly.
usually, unless you're working with a company from Belgium, in which case they might. Dude, how do people reach out and get in contact with you? Annuitas, all of that.
So easy. Go to annuitas.com, fill out a contact form. I will call you back.
Cool.
Every single lead that comes through has a process on our side, but I look at everything. So
And you know what? No one's guaranteed to become a QL.
yeah,
And I guess people know that they're safe filling out a form because they know that they're not instantly turned into an MQL.
I think that the biggest hurt to sellers over the last 2 decades has been the serious MQL, because they created an environment where all these people went out and filled out a form, and then a seller, like a vulture, immediately jumped on top of them. And think about the disservice to the seller.
Mm-hmm.
The famed Xerox Sales Academy training, Robert, my man here, based on the senior sales training methodology from Xerox Corporation, wrote Customer-Centered Selling. And this, first of all, this is a fantastic book, but it's all about the circle, right? The journey that buyers go through. And I talk about this in my book too. I actually interviewed Robert and used some stuff from
Wow.
his book and mine. But think about the respect for, like, a seller who respects your time and energy and wants to just intersect your process and add value to it. That's a seller that I have time for every day of the week. Everybody does.
Yeah.
But a seller that is just calling an MQL and is a vulture, by the way,
Yeah.
AI agents that do that are a problem too.
Oh, 100%.
So, like, if you're going out and buying AI technology so that those, MQLs, those form fill out people, are now just getting, spam AI, like, you're just making it worse, man. Right? Like, the goal is to sell something to these people, not piss them off.
For sure.
So let's respect
Yeah.
sellers, because they work really hard. Actors and sellers, like, get up every day and are told most of the day that they're not good enough, and yet, like, keep coming back for more. And I respect actors and sellers, and what they keep showing up for the auditions on the actor side. But, like, let's respect sellers. It's a hard job, but let's set them up as marketers to be successful. And the success comes whenever you're engaging with someone, right place, right time. You're adding value to the buying unit's journey.
Yeah. Dude, masterclass. Thank you so much for coming on here.
Yeah.
I mean, I like hanging out with you anyways, but
I'd have a bourbon and a cigar with you any day of the week, Casey.
dude, we need to I feel like that should be its own podcast. That's your podcast. We've been talking about that for a long time.
There you go.
But we're gonna get that bourbon going on.
Shaken, not stirred. That's what our go-to-market joint podcast can be called.
Do you have a favorite bourbon? Shaken, not stirred. Yeah.
You know what? I feel like my wife likes the Angel's Envy, and I feel like that's kind of like our house brand now.
Nice.
So, but I also like some traditionals, like a Jim Beam Black Label. Like, that's lovely.
Wow.
And Irish whiskey can be lovely too.
Yeah. Man. All right. Well, now that everyone's thirsty listening to this, thirsty to go adjust their buyer unit demand, maybe with a bourbon. You know what? Nothing goes better with buyer unit demand like a glass of bourbon.
I always, if I want a Manhattan, bourbon Manhattan or a rye Manhattan, lovely.
See,
So,
and I'm just a new convert, so I'm in that old fashioned category. I'm just,
Casey, you're just old fashioned in a lot of ways,
you
but
know,
all good ways.
and I kind of am, and it's kind of on brand for me. It is a little on brand. Dude, thank you for coming on here. Thank you. Like a master class. We talked about our unit demand. We talked about that, how ABM gets it wrong. And step number one, dude, thank you again.
Yeah. Well, listen, we appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the opportunity. And the conversation is always great with you, Casey. So thank you.
Hell yeah. And those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, running out of space, writing in the margins. Then share this with someone else. 1 person, 2 people, 3,000, 9,000 is cool too. But even 1 person who needs to hear this the next time you encounter someone treating you or your organization like a single journey with 1 stakeholder, they're out of their absolute mind. Maybe just throw them a link to this episode and say, please watch this and before you contact me ever again. But who needs to hear this? Maybe yourself. Don't forget to start with step 1 and figure that out. With that, Adam, thank you again, sir.
Thank you, Casey. Click like for Casey.
Awesome, everyone. This has been another crazy cool, very exciting episode of the Connect to Market Pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connecttomarket.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.